Good morning, afternoon, or evening. My name is Richard Tripp. I'm Director of Care of Poor People, and welcome to my blog. This week, the story I'm going to tell you is the stick it in your ear story. And for reasons which will become apparent at the end of the story, you'll understand why I titled it that. The story I'm going to tell today is about the first spring break. Now, when I first started doing the Christmas breakfast for the homeless, one of the churches that got involved was Unity Church of Overland Park. And the minister there, her name was Mary Amway. And she approached me one day and said, Mr. Tripp, you do a great job for the poor and homeless in Kansas City during the Christmas breakfast, but have you ever thought about doing something for them in the spring or the summertime? And I thought about it for a minute. I said, but Mary, you don't understand. It takes lots of money to do this, and I haven't got no funds. I'm lucky to be able to pull it together to do the Christmas breakfast. And she looked at me and she sort of smiled. She said, Richard, I didn't ask you that, Richard. I asked you, did you ever think about doing something for the spring for the homeless? And I looked back at her and I said, well, yeah, but like I said, Mary, the funding. She said, Richard, don't worry about the funding. I'll take care of the funding. You get something going for them for the spring. So I said, okay, Mary, I'll call you when I think of something. So I went home that night and I thought about it and I come up with this great plan of having an event in the springtime where we could give them clothes, summer type clothing and hygiene articles, the whole thing. Sort of like we did the survival event. There was a couple problems with it all. Number one was where was I going to do it because we didn't have a building. But, after thinking about it, I thought, well, why not make it a block party? And at the time, I was affiliated with the Metropolitan Lutheran Ministry Homeless Center down at 9th McGee. And, after thinking about it, I thought, well, between 9th and 10th McGee wouldn't be a bad place to do it. If I could get the city to go along with it, I'd have to get a permit. I knew that, one of them block permits. But, we'd be able to do it there. So I called Mary back and I told her what I decided to do. And she said, well, come get the money. And she gave me the money to do all the stuff I had to do, like rent toilets and grills and all the stuff. So I went and rented everything and we got ready for the day. It was on a Friday. It was on a Good Friday, actually, the first spring break. And I invited my mother down to film the event going on. So we're down there. We've got the street blocked. We've got toilets in the middle of the street. I mean, we blocked that whole street off. Had them porta potties in the middle of the street. We had the grills in the street. We had probably about 50 people there. So it was about almost noon when we was going to start. And the director of the homeless center, Ken West, come out the door of the center there and he waved at me. He waved me over. He said, Richard, somebody from the city's in there on the phone. They want to talk to you. So I walked in, picked up the phone. Is this Richard Tripp? Yes, sir. It is. Can I help you? And he said, well, yeah, Mr. Tripp. We decided we made a mistake giving you that permit, so you're not going to be able to do the event. I talked to him for a few minutes, and tried to tell him. I said, look, we've done rented everything. I've spent all the money people would give me. There's no way I can call it off. He said, well, you got to call it off. Well, it just so happened my mother was there. And she looks at me and she says, what's wrong, Rick? And I looked at her and I said, well, Mom, they say I can't do the event. Well, you've got the permit, ain't you? I said, well, yeah, I got the permit, but they say there's something wrong with it, Mom. I shouldn't do it. My mother looked at me and she looked funny. She said, son, you got the permit, right? Well, yeah, Mom, I got the permit. Tell them to stick it in their ear, son. Tell them to stick it in their ear and do your event. Well, I did that. I told the guy, my mother said, stick it in your ear. Guy said, you can't talk to us like that. I'll send the police over. I'll get you shut down if you try to do that event. I said, well, sir, it's like this. My mom was my advisor, and she said, tell you stick it in your ear, and that's what I'm telling you. And I hung up on him. Well, it was about 20 minutes later, the police showed up. They said, you got to have a permit. I said, here's the permit. Guy looking at it, and all the time my mother is shooting on camera. He finally sees the camera, the cop did, and he looks around. He says, well, you got a permit, so I guess you can go on and do it. So, reason I tell that story is not so much because my mother said stick it in your ear. It's the point that sometimes you have to stand up to do what's right, even when everybody says you're wrong. That was one of the times, my mother passed. God bless her soul. I love her and I miss her. But I'll never forget when she said, stick it in your ear. Okay, that's the story for this week. At COP, we need lots of things as usual. Donations, volunteers, people that are computer literate, we can always use. If you happen to belong to a civic club, a church, an organization, and you'd like to invite me to come speak at your organizations and give you a lot more stories, all you have to do is call me, Richard Tripp, at Carol Poor People at area code 816-920-6119. Again, 816-920-6119. I will be back next week with another story. I hope you guys enjoy these stories. I enjoy telling them. So with that, I'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.